Candidates vying to succeed Chancellor Angela Merkel have faced off in one last televised debate ahead of Sunday's election here in Germany. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the numbers with our election analyst, William Glucroft.
Thanks, that's right. We've got one of the last big polls to show you before Sunday's historic vote. Let's put it up here and have a look at what it shows. Now, it appears that the center-left, that's the SPD, the ones in red there, they're holding strong, holding steady at 25%. Now, remember, that's a big comeback because for a long time it looked like the center-right CDU-CSU bloc, those are the ones in black, would keep on governing as they have under Angela Merkel for almost the last 16 years. Instead, you see them, they are in second place at 23%, but that is them creeping up in the last few days, and it is within the margin of error. Then we have the third place Greens, 16.5%. Disappointing for them. It means that their chances of leadership are all but vanished if these numbers prove correct. But how well the Greens and other smaller parties do, such as the Liberal Free Democrats here in yellow or the Left Party you see in pink, will have a huge impact on what the next German government will look like. Now, will it be more center-right? Will it be more center-left? Will it be more business-friendly, more climate-friendly? It all depends on how these parties end up on Sunday and where coalition negotiations go in the weeks after that. We really haven't seen polling like this in Germany before, where there's really no clear frontrunner. Let's look at this just over the past year, where the polls are just all over the place. Specifically, look at the black and red lines. That's the conservative center-right Union and the center-left SPD. Those are Germany's biggest parties. Together, they're used to walking away with something like 70% or more of the vote together. Now look where they are. Maybe they're going to end up with a combined 50%. You can see just how fragmented German politics have become. None of the parties are doing particularly well, and that's what makes this post-Merkel election so unpredictable and definitely one to watch. Let's turn things back over to the big table.
DW's William Glucroft there showing us just how tight and exceptional this race is. Well, last night, the party candidates vying to succeed Chancellor Merkel met for their final debate before Election Day on Sunday. This debate included not just the top three candidates, but for the first time this election cycle, representatives of all 7 parties currently in Parliament faced off. They clashed over a variety of topics, hoping to sway Germany's 60 million eligible voters. The party that wins the most seats, of course, in the Bundestag on Sunday will try to form a coalition government led by their chancellor candidate. Well, DW political correspondent Thomas Sparrow has been following all those debates and joins us now. Thomas, this was the last big debate for the election. What are your main takeaways?
It was also the last push for all those politicians to try and get especially those undecided voters. Different polls in Germany in the last few days have revealed really a large number of people who have not made up their mind for Sunday. A poll last week, for example, even said that up to 38% of Germans have not decided for which party they will vote on Sunday. So this was really a last push on national television to try and get those undecided voters. And this is a particularly important element if you look precisely at those numbers that William presented just there. The fact that the difference between the major parties is so narrow, it's so tight, and this makes this election very interesting. And it also makes those candidates very interested in getting all the votes that they can in the last few days, in the last few hours before that election on Sunday.
Now, unlike previous debates, foreign policy was a talking point this time round. Let's listen in to what the candidates had to say on that.
We have to make sure Europe is strong and sovereign. I think that's the most important responsibility that Germany has. We're that big country right in the middle of the European Union with the biggest population and the most economic power, and so we have to make sure Europe is more able to speak with one voice. The whole of Europe is watching to see what kind of a new government Germany is going to have, because Germany is always an important country in Europe. It holds Europe together with its economic power, and at the same time, it's a political power that everybody looks to. And that's why I believe we need a stronger, more sovereign Europe, especially when it comes to foreign and security policy.
We've seen that the void in European foreign policy, which was mostly due to the fact that Europe's biggest country, Germany, didn't join in as it should, That void has been filled by authoritarian powers like China, but also Russia.
Thomas, what do you make of what the candidates had to say on foreign policy?
Foreign policy, as you stressed, Terry, played a very important role in this last debate. In particular, the discussion was on Europe. On the one hand, most major parties stressing the importance of having a stronger European Union. That's something where they all agree, those major parties, although with different focus. And then the issue of China, a very controversial issue altogether. And you could clearly sense that division between values and interests, between protecting human rights and criticizing, for example, China's human rights record, something that the Greens, for example, emphasized, and on the other hand, making sure that Germany's economic interests with China are still protected. That was absolutely evident in this debate on Thursday, and it will definitely play also a role in Germany's coalition negotiations and in the way that the new German government deals then with these important questions, not only the question of Europe, but also the question of how to deal with important countries around the world like China or like Russia.
Another big topic in this debate was climate change. It's a key voter issue in the election. Let's listen in there.
We in the AfD say that there has always been climate change, with warmer and colder periods. And so it's no reason to grind down our industrial core in Germany. Of course, we've been looking at how we can meet the Paris climate goals, and this summer showed us how urgent that is, with the forest fires, the floods. That's why we need to take urgent action. One thing we need to do is change our transport policy. We have to turn Germany into a country of railways. We need to reopen closed rail lines and stations so that people aren't forced to use their cars.
I think we have to be honest as politicians who travel around in armored limousines and airplanes and not try to make out we're the biggest carbon footprint reducers. That would be cynical, and I think being truthful is useful here.
So different views there among the candidates on how to address climate change. Your take on that, Thomas?
Well, and it's actually very interesting because if you look at different polls over the last few months, you will realize that climate protection is not only one of the biggest problems for Germany, according to people who took part in those polls, but it's also one area where people would like change. And the logical thing here is for the Greens to actually profit from those feelings. Annalena Baerbock, the Chancellor candidate for the Greens, repeatedly stressing the need for a so-called climate government. However, the Greens have not profited in recent weeks. And as we saw already from the numbers, they're in third place and with very little possibilities of actually leading the next German government. That has to do also with the fact that all other major parties here in Germany have put climate protection at the top of the agenda, at the top of their agenda, and trying to present different proposals on how to tackle this issue, which is not only very important for Germany, if you especially consider that Germany has not met all of its climate goals, something that Chancellor Angela Merkel also stressed a few weeks ago, but also if you look at this as a major international challenge where Germany will also play an important role in the next 4 years under that new government.
This debate, Thomas, also included the lead candidates of smaller parties in Parliament. A couple of them could help form the next government. Any standout moments from them?
This is particularly important, Terry, because the election on Sunday will not only mark the end of a long process, but the beginning of a long process, namely that formation of a government coalition. And any government coalition, if we look at the numbers now, will have to probably include at least one of those smaller parties. One example, for example, could be the Liberal FDP. So it's not only important to look at the Chancellor candidates and at the biggest parties and how they perform, but also it's equally important to look at how those smaller parties perform on Sunday and what role they could play in any future negotiations.
Thomas, thank you very much. Our political correspondent, Thomas Sparrow.